Welcome to Marketing. Grab some coffee and let's talk about what's working in marketing, who these strategies are designed for, and how to be customer-centric while we do it. Hey there, this is Leanne with Marketing. I'm joined today by Zach Carlin, co-founder of Summit Chasers Network. Zach and I met when I was a guest on his show, and I am so excited about everything he's working on. Zach, tell us more about you and your background and what's up.
I appreciate it. And if everybody hasn't seen it yet, Leanne killed it on our podcast. So go check that out. But no, I really appreciate you bringing me on. I think we're gonna be able to add a lot of value to your listeners. But a little bit about me, nothing really too special. I'm from a small town in Canada, southern Alberta. I actually grew up a farm kid and made a interesting decision when I was 19 years old, almost 20, to move to Las Vegas. And I fought professionally in martial arts for a short period of time. Luckily, a short period of time, I can still put together some coherent sentences, and my body still works somewhat. But I got out of that due to an injury, actually, and I got into another sport, CrossFit, and I was able to travel the world. I didn't realize that you could even compete in that sport. A lot of people don't even think it's a sport, and that's fine. But I got to travel the world and meet some amazing people, but more importantly, that's when I got to really start to find my true passion, which is entrepreneurship, which is building something, building a business and giving people opportunities and be able to provide great services and products to the communities. And that was, I feel like I'm aging myself sometimes when I'm doing this. I'm older than I look, but that was about 14 years ago now when I bought into my first ever small boutique gym. And I thought that because I was an owner of a business, again, young and naive, that, we must be rolling in it. We must have so much money. We have 200 members. They're paying $200 a month. I can't wait to get my check. And we had our first P&L statement meeting. And the number was very small, in the single digits. But luckily it was in the green. A lot of businesses can't say that, right? Especially in the first few years. And I was like, where's all the money gone? Like, we have 200 members. I'm doing my math. I'm like, we should have some money. But there's so much more that goes into it, obviously. And then I got obsessed with how do I make that number go up? So when I wasn't training and I wasn't on the road competing, that's what I was doing. My coach told me not to move. If you're not working out or doing some sort of recovery thing, don't do anything. Sleep, eat, don't do anything. And I used that time to study and learn how to make that number go up. And it really snowballed into a huge passion of mine. It went from almost being like a hobbyist entrepreneur, professional athlete, to hobbyist professional athlete to entrepreneur. And it really kind of created the foundation for where I am now, a lot of the frameworks that we do with what we teach with our clients. And then I ended up flipping half a dozen gyms for a profit, smaller boutique gyms. And then I opened I got brought on as a partner in a fitness equipment company. And we scaled that in about 2.5 years from 1.8 to just over 20 million. That seems like a big jump, but if we didn't do that, the way things were set up, it would have been weird if we didn't hit it. We had a lot of logistics and stuff that were on our side. But that was my first soiree into like a bigger, growing, medium-sized enterprise, having to hire the right people, putting together SOPs, the importance of having documented processes and procedures, and the importance of developing people, putting the development of your people on a pedestal as opposed to just the inauthentic going out and finding new business just to not be able to fulfill on it because you don't have the right people and you're not focusing on your product or your service. So from there, we moved back to Las Vegas. That was in Canada at the time. We moved back to Las Vegas. We had a daughter and we lost everything. Me and my now ex-wife, we tried to open a business during COVID, a brick and mortar fitness facility. She was a nutritionist, so we thought it would work. And that was late 2019. And we lost everything, absolutely everything. So we had to start from ground zero, and to the point where I had to get a job for Netflix doing customer service, telling elderly people where to find their remote so they could turn on their TVs in the summertime in my garage in Las Vegas with a newborn and a 2-year-old. And I was rock bottom. And, as a kid, growing up as a drug addict, but this was the lowest I've ever been. So I had to find a way to get back up. I had people that were counting on me. And so I did what I know to do, which was, let's find a way to start a business. So luckily I partnered with somebody and we were able to kind of build upon what they had. And we had a small boutique fitness facility in the heart of Las Vegas, downtown Las Vegas, 1,500 square feet. And then we grew up to doing about $150,000 a month in revenue. And then some of the stuff that we were teaching, we were doing kind of life coaching, leadership coaching, accountability. We had to teach a lot of sales because there's a lot of sales involved in the fitness field, especially with the type of offerings that we had. And we had a client who was like, hey, this would really work for my sales leaders and this type of process, the accountability process. And we're like, sure, what do you do? I own a bail bonds company. What? I have no idea. Like, I know, like I watched Dog the Bounty Hunter. Like that's all I know, right? And he's like, no, it's just sales, right? Like you have a sales leader, a manager, you have a team, and people call in with a problem. It's your job to solve the problem and sell that you're the one that can solve the problem. We're like, okay, yeah, we could do that. So we put together a framework, and we ended up working with them for about 6 months, and they increased their revenue by 11% when they had not seen any growth for the 3 years beforehand. We're like, oh, we got something here. So we shut down that, and we went all in on working with bigger companies, or not bigger companies, but with other businesses. And I mean, I got to work with companies like Hewlett Packard when they acquired Zerto, Salesforce, Car Gurus, Damco, Farmers Insurance, Farm Credit of Illinois, like some really diverse companies. But I was realizing they would hire us to solve a symptom of the problem, which was we were lacking revenue. We need help with our sales team. But the symptom, it only lasts for so long. It either can work in a short term, but not long term, or it just doesn't work at all and they waste a lot of money and then they're mad that your service didn't work. So I had that realization that I'm kind of putting ice on a bad knee when really there's something else that caused it. And I identified it like a lot of these businesses just don't have the foundation of how to hire the right people. How do I communicate effectively to my team? Leadership development, personal development, because a lot of founders don't put the emphasis on personal development, but they don't realize that your business can't grow beyond you. Like you're always going to be kind of that ceiling that the business can grow past in a lot of ways. And even again with their marketing, being authentic, telling their story. A lot of people try to game the system right away, and we're going to get into that. They try to game the system without how do I create a great product or a great service? How do I communicate that to the right people? And how do I do it in an authentic way that doesn't force me to have to put on all these masks and have to fake it all the time? And then, and again, things are a little bit different now. You could game the system a bit more back then, but again, it was these foundations that a lot of these businesses were missing. And if we integrated those solid foundational frameworks, it allowed all these other things to operate at a much higher level. And that's where Summit Chasers started, is business foundations.
Awesome. So much golden things that I would love to talk more and more about in just that brief introduction. Mm-hmm. Some of them we're going to save for a different day, but I'm going to make 2 quick comments. One of them is that I think the part about that I've seen personally, because I also started off in fitness and in gyms and wellness and places like that, is that it's an entry level business model, right? Mm-hmm. From practitioner to boutique owner. And it is such a low threat to entry. And there's so much opportunity there and it's democratic in my mind, mm-hmm. because you don't need higher education to be a good fitness coach or personal trainer. You should have it for nutrition. You should have additional training for some of those things or rehab. But for me, when I was a personal trainer and group exercise instructor, and I went to business school, was that I realized it didn't matter what trade I had, if I was a photographer or whatever industry or vertical I was in, if I didn't know how to run a business, I was never going to make progress. And that was unacceptable for me. I need to make progress. Mm-hmm. And so I chased the education. And so, hearing your story, it's so inspiring because you didn't just roll over and let life bulldoze you. And I think that is something that we all have inside of us, whether or not we realize it. And I want to encourage everyone when they're facing those tough moments to take a deep breath and know it'll pass, and move forward in just the small steps that you can take at a time. So that's my warm fuzzies, that I feel needs to be said. The other part I want to talk about was that, clearly you did things a little bit right at some of these points, right? At some of these points, you did some things correctly. And what I'm seeing now from your current Summit Chasers network is that there is a lot of content that is really resonating with people, but it's also like, from just like a pure data perspective, it's outperforming my own numbers for now. But at the same time, it's really attracting a lot of people. And I know that there's some things that you're doing behind that and reasons why you chose the methods that you chose. So kind of talk us through your marketing strategy that you're doing today. And, give me the soapbox about like why you chose that and why you think it's the right way to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I appreciate the sentiments. Absolutely. It's really, and I've tried. In my previous agency, when you say I've done a lot of things right, I do them a little bit better now because I did them so wrong before. Right. Yeah. But I think this still happens a lot, was we try to game the system. We look at the vanity metrics way too much. We put too much weight on the vanity metrics, which is the views, the subscribers, comments, impressions, all this kind of stuff. But they don't actually mean anything. They're inauthentic, right? We need to look at more authentic metrics as opposed to, okay, how many people, if I was to reach out to this many people, how many would reply? If I was to call this many people, how many would answer the phone? If I was to put out this type of content, how many people would give me feedback on it, right? So it's much more just being authentic and getting I think we kind of talked about this in our podcast, is getting the data, getting their feedback, and then actually taking that into consideration into the next iteration of your content, of your service, or whatever it is. So really our strategy has been just be authentic. People can see through this stuff so much now. With AI coming out, people have like a nose for it. They'll see your blog and they'll be like, okay, AI did that for sure. Or they'll see, we put out, a YouTube channel and you see it's really edited and you see it has all this stuff in the background, all this kind of stuff. And it looks cool. It looks nice. Maybe grabs attention for a little bit, but it doesn't, people can see through it. They're like, okay, how much of this was edited out? Like this was scripted. Like this must have taken them this much longer to write it out. They must have taken this information from somewhere else. But if we can post content of just you and me talking and me fumbling my words once in a while, or having to correct myself, or having to call myself out, right? It's so much more engaging and people can relate to it a lot more. And it's also, people don't tell their story. They try to hide it. They try to tell somebody else's story, or they try to pretend that they have somebody else's story. But what's going to draw the right people in is your story. And this idea of authentic storytelling, engaging in a community. People have similar stories, maybe not the same words, maybe not the same events, but similar tracks of their story. You're going to be so much more engaged with them, and they're going to be so much more engaged with you. And it's nice to see, honestly, if you can put out good content that people get value out of and they can relate to, that over time is going to outperform somebody just trying to game their SEO or use AI for everything, or use automatic outreach for all platforms, right? So it's a lot of work right now in the initial phases, because it's just volume at first, and it's authentic volume. But that's, for right now, that's our strategy. And I wish I had a more, on Tuesdays I post this at this time. On Thursdays it's this, because this is when more people in this industry are at home. Like, it's not that. It's just put out authentic content, and then over time it'll outperform people that try to game the system.
I mean, that's the difference between strategy and a playbook, right? Because let's say that today, when we're recording this, you say, oh yeah, Tuesdays at 12 a.m. That's when you really want to post. Okay, is that relevant 6 months from now? Maybe someone's coming across this podcast 6 months, a year, and they're binging all the episodes. Is that still going to be good advice? Probably not, like maybe. I mean, I guess daylight is always going to be daylight, but like, you know, the algorithms are a business. And when you look at what these platforms are doing, they're doing things in their own best interests. And however that's going to evolve, it's going to evolve. And to your point, they're evolving away from certain types of content because they're saying this doesn't resonate with our audience. So
when you talk to, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there's a great example of this, and it's somebody, you know, some people might roll their eyes and like, okay, he puts out videos for kids, but it's Mr. Beast. He tries to give advice, or he has given advice in the past, and somebody would ask him in an interview in front of thousands of people, what is the key to making viral videos? And then he's like, he kind of shakes his head and he's like, put out 1,000 videos, and then you'll just intentionally get better every time, and then you'll make a viral video. You'll make viral videos over time and consistently. Like, you can't over time, if you want to do this for a long period of time and you want your content to resonate for a long period of time, like you said, if you want people to be able to go back and binge your content, like, it just has to be good.
Yeah.
It has to be good and it has to resonate, right? It's like, back your product, back who you are, back who your team is, and put that out there. I'm not saying to share, you know, the bedtime stories and that kind of stuff, but put it out there and be honest and authentic about it, and just constantly improve. Just be intentional about improving. Don't be intentional about gaming the system. Just be intentional about being better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, there's something to be said for being confident in what your story is and for storytelling. And that's a little bit of guess and check, you know. I think one of the hidden benefits of this specific podcast for me isn't just hearing other people's story from my guests, but it's been that self-awareness of, how am I saying this? And is that really what I meant? And like, does that, you know, how have I grown from the way that I said it that one day? And, you know, kind of taking bits and pieces. And now I can better articulate, hi, I'm Leanne. I believe in customer-centric marketing strategies based on data. I grow companies. This is my metrics of, you know, I've done some kick-ass things. These are what they are. And I've gotten better at that just by, you know, doing interviews on either side of it. And same as for YouTube. That being said, there are certain things that do and don't work on channels like YouTube or making content. And times where it's just like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, that's not right for you. What comes to mind where you're just like, you know, maybe you shouldn't be trying to chase, you know, this type of content. Maybe you need to start at XYZ, or what are some, you know, disclaimers to this?
Be authentic and stuff, but you don't also just don't throw spaghetti against the wall and then hope that, you know, some of it will stick as well. Right. I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is like being intentional about improving. Right. And in order to do that, you do have to pay attention to, you know, the trends. You have to pay attention to how the algorithm's changing. You have to pay attention to what's relevant out there and things. Because sometimes, you know, I mean, during COVID and a lot of stuff that happened just before COVID was a good testament to that. Like, there are some things that, I mean, depending on who you were, some people leaned right into it, right? And that's their thing. That's fine. And then, but if you're trying to appeal to a certain audience, you know, maybe stay away from that kind of. So you do have to pay attention to these things. You can't just keep throwing stuff and then hoping that it works. So you do have to create these feedback experimental loops. And by that I mean just testing and measuring. Okay, this works right now. Let's create a feedback loop. Let's identify maybe certain competitors or people that have similar content or similar businesses in our space or in other industries even. And let's see how they're performing. Let's see what they're doing. Let's see what's bombing. Let's see what's doing well. Let's see how they're making adjustments, whatever it is. So you always have to create these experimental feedback loops. You don't just, you know, put out 1,000 videos or 1,000 pieces of content and then eventually, you know, I'll get lucky. I'll flip a coin and one of them will get lucky. It's that intentionality and setting up those processes to get the feedback that you need to make adjustments. But it is one of those things where you have to identify what environment you're in. And we've talked about this before, identifying what type of market environment you're in based on how you develop a business strategy. Same thing for your marketing. You have to identify what type of environment I'm in, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever it is. Identify what that environment is, and then get as much feedback as you can to create that strategy. Because maybe there's some content that do great on YouTube, and then maybe there's content that I can splice it up, and there's content that do better on LinkedIn, and then there's content that'd be better on TikTok. Like just identifying who's on each platform, what's the environment of each one, like X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, X or Twitter or whatever it's called.
We're still going to call it Twitter.
We're still going to call it Twitter, whatever it is. I don't care. I've never been on it, but it's like that was a big thing. That environment changed when Elon took it over. That was a big thing. So you have to adjust how you utilize it. Maybe not a ton, but you still have to pay attention to and adjust it to get the most out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminded me of a couple things that, like, you know, I wrote on my notes as I was listening, was that is to set up the hypothesis and the experiment in a scientifically sound way. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm a nerd. I love science. This is why, you know, I took, this is one of my fun anecdotes about this is in high school, I wasn't the greatest student. I didn't really want to be there. I did great in grad school when I was paying for it myself, but like high school, did not want to be there.
It's weird how that works.
Yeah, all of a sudden accountability. But I didn't study for my biology final whatsoever. I just was like, I got better things to do. And, you know, I took the test. I felt pretty good about it, actually. And then we got the results back, and my score actually, like, set the curve. Like, I was the, like, high score in the class for that one exam. And I was like, you know, maybe I understand this better than other people. Maybe I should, like, follow through on this. Mm-hmm. And so for a long time, I was like, oh, science, not business. But when you think about it, where business has evolved is now it is a science. There are feedback loops, just like there's feedback loops in the human body. You know, a simple human body feedback loop is your temperature. Your temperature regulation isn't just flatlined. It gets too hot, it gets too cold, and it goes up and down all day long. You get a fever, it goes higher. Mm-hmm. But you know, so when you're setting up the experimentation, you know, is this going to work? How do I go viral? Is this working for me? You want to, if you had 1,000 videos, you would set them up to go out, you know, maybe you have a small buffer zone so that logistically you can manage the bandwidth of consistently putting out content. But what you don't do usually is get 1,000 pieces of content and then upload them all at once. You stagger that. You set up the experiment correctly. I don't know if I think that really needs to be said, but here I am saying it.
No, it's true. It's true. Well, I mean, and like those 1,000, also people, like this isn't going to happen overnight. Like when I say 1,000 videos, like that could happen over a few years before you really get it right in some cases, right? It's a lot of time, but people don't want to put in the time. Like, again, I go back to my Mr. Beast example, because the more I've learned about him, the more I really respect him. I mean, I always did respect him, but the more I'm like, wow, he's been doing it for 10, 12 years, and 8 of it, he sucks. Maybe 7 of it, he sucked. But he had to suck, and he was intentionally learning and intentionally getting better every time in order to do it. So those 1,000 videos, like you, again, being intentional. Okay, let's say you have 100 pieces of content in a month. Like, create those little. I call it. I'm not quite as intelligent as you. I call it like shooting bullets and then cannonballs. So you shoot a bunch of bullets, and then you see if a bullet hits the target. Okay, now shoot the cannonball. All right. So the bullets are kind of your experiments where you don't put all your resources into it, right? Until you see what works. You find something that works, right? You find that bullet that hit the target. Okay, now let's shoot the cannonball, right? But then once you shoot that cannonball and you continue to shoot those cannonballs, you're still shooting bullets over here to see what could work, maybe what could work better. Are things changing? What could work in a different way? That kind of thing. So it's always having those experiments. But yeah, I like you put it a little bit more eloquently.
I put it in a little bit more nerdy. Let's be real. Here's as you were saying that, this is where I think that athletes or people that have that physical training background have a competitive advantage, right? It's not because they're competitive people. Yeah, duh. But it's because they trust the process. You don't get stronger. You don't get better at your sport without showing up physically to do something that most people intrinsically avoid every single day and following a written plan. It just doesn't happen. You cannot execute, you cannot compete at a higher level without doing the training sessions, without doing the lifting programs, without doing the nutrition. And it's very comprehensive, like lifestyle. It's not a just, oh, I dabbled in it. Like you can't dabble in success. And if you can, please tell me your secrets. But that's not how it works.
Not at all. And I think that's a great point. That's a really good point. And I think, I mean, and you said this earlier too in the podcast, but having that background in like the fitness and the wellness industry is huge, because it's also like you're selling something. You're selling the possibility that you'll get the result if you follow the plan for a long period of time to like maybe 90%, effectiveness, or to a 90% adherence to the plan. And you still might not get the result you want. So therefore that's data in itself. Okay, let's go back and adjust things. But it takes time. Like if you're just starting out, you'll see some results because you're just starting. Your body's adapting really quickly. Just like if you've never done Google Ads before and you go and try Google Ads, you might get a couple leads, right? And that might do well, right? But you're starting from 0 to 2 as, an infinite increase in revenue generation, right? But then it's how do you go from 2 to 10? And then how do you go from 10 to 20? That's where it could take a lot of time. And you have to stick to the plan. You can't freak out and start changing all these things, grasping at straws. And okay, well, I saw this AI chatbot work for this person, so I'm going to go spend a bunch of money over here. Oh, it's our CRM. I'm going to go try a different CRM. Oh, it's our sales process. I'm going to go get a sales trainer. Just stick to it and get the data and find out. Actually, again, we get so stuck on the symptoms. And in fitness, another example in fitness, I did a lot of corrective exercise therapy with a lot of clients, and they'd come and they'd say my knee hurts, or my lower back hurts, or my shoulder hurts, and then they go get massages, and then see like, hey, focus on my lower back because my lower back hurts. That's a symptom of something else. A lot of times their hip flexors were out, their hips were a little bit out of place, or even the way, if they were runners, if their gait was wrong on their right foot. So if they rolled a little bit to the outside, so as they ran, their foot kind of went to the outside like that, it could hurt their hip. It could affect their hip. So we focus on the symptom so much, but what is causing it? You don't know what's causing it unless you take the time, do the experiments, and don't freak out and just grasp at stuff.
Yeah, you can't have cannonball strategy. You have to, I'm going to mix metaphors here, but you have to go upstream. You have to start at the source of what you're doing. And until you get that source right, it's just gonna, and I've said this repeatedly and I stole it from someone else, but you're just gonna piss off a wider swath of people. And you have to start with the foundations. And I know that it's very, it's not. So I think like there's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's pretty popular now, but it's like, the less you know, the more confident you are that you know it. And the more you know, like you're less confident. And the more I know that people suck at the basics, and that we really need to get the basics down. And it's not shiny. It's not like novel. Per your point about like the AI chat box and the, sales trainer and whatever the latest fad is that like, man, if you don't have the right thing to say, or you're being fake or inauthentic in your YouTubes, or you're overly scripted, or people, like, you're telling people that you're just so generous, but then behind the scenes, like, you're actually kind of a monster. People find out, like,
they do. And there's another analogy here, since we're just sharing analogies, and this is one of my favorite ones because it has to do with martial arts. But you don't fear the man who's practiced 1,000 kicks. You fear the man who's practiced the same kick 1,000 times, right? So just getting really, really good at the basics and the foundations, and then always coming back to improve the foundation. It's like a pyramid, right? You need to have that wide base. But if a lot of people forget about the foundations and they start stacking bricks on top of each other, all of a sudden they're 2 miles high and only, 100 meters, 100 yards. I'm Canadian, sorry, meters. 100 yards wide at the bottom. Like you're unstable now. You always have to come back, widen your base, improve the basics, and then go higher. And yeah, a lot of people just don't do that. They don't want to. It's not sexy.
And it's not, but it's the way that you scale a business, because you're going to run through a lot of wasted spend and eventually fold and go under if you don't get it right the first time. Let's say that you did no customer research. Let's say that you didn't have, you're entering this, and I call it the velocity, learning velocity. Mm-hmm. So you're entering in this higher learning velocity because you've had all these previous experiences where you're like, yeah, this is actually what people need to know. This is what resonates with them. So you're starting in a higher spot. But if you had no background knowledge, let's say that you were running, I thought of one analogy, but I really don't want to blast anybody. If let's say that you were running a dog walking business, all right? Clearly, no one I know is running a dog walking business. More power to you. I'll help you with it. But if you don't know anything about dogs, maybe don't enter that business first. Maybe don't say, I'll make sure that Fluffy, and then you say something that cats do. Come on. Now, not only have you put out all this material that says the wrong thing, you're going to have to go back and redo it. You're going to have to pay for new ads. You're going to have to pay for new graphics. You're going to have to fix it all. So do your research first, please.
Yeah. And there's a fun concept that this is coined from Jim Collins that I use many times with our clients to kind of identify, should they be dog walkers or should they be, whatever,
cat sitters.
I don't know. Cat sitters. Exactly. Should it be a dog walker or a cat sitter? But you have to answer these three intersecting kind of questions. And it's, what could you be the best in the world at? What are you most passionate about? And then what drives your economic engine? And if what you could be the best in the world at and what you're most passionate about don't align, at least in some capacity, it gets tough for you to do things for a long period of time and to do them successfully for a long period of time, because then you have to outsource everything. If you're not innately passionate about solving this problem or doing this thing, you're not going to stick with it. You're not going to put in the work. You're not going to get uncomfortable because you're not passionate about it. Who cares? People work 100 hours a week on purpose on their own accord for something that they're passionate about, and they're more willing to learn. So if you have to answer at least those two questions honestly before you dive into something like that, right? And then a lot of business owners, okay, sure, maybe they're not super passionate about selling windows or passionate about selling houses or whatever it is, but maybe you're passionate about what that could bring to your community. Maybe you're passionate about the jobs that you're creating, whatever it is, right? But find out what that passion is, right? So you're more likely to get better at it, find the right people, and do it authentically for a long period of time.
Yeah, you have to have a mission, and that's what brings purpose to our lives. And part of having a mission, we're kind of, this is why we have discussion prompts, because I'll veer off track from marketing sometimes and just get into our whole lives. But, and brands need a mission. There we go. I'll tie it back. Brands need a mission to make their customers care and their employees care, and everything surrounding it needs to care. And it's okay if it's not I'm passionate about drinking water because I would die if I don't drink water. Okay, cool. Me too. You don't have to be passionate about your literal most number one top passion. We don't want you to burn out. We don't want this to be destroying, but you have to have some sort of emotional tie-in. And so therefore does your content and everything that ties back to it. Because, if you don't have a mission, you don't have something meaningful. And sometimes it's hard. I'm not saying that your calendar scheduling software needs to have a huge emotional tie down, but you can, it works, Now we are no longer frustrated. We are a painkiller, not a vitamin.
Yeah, exactly. I have a question for you, and this would be interesting to hear your answer to this one. What do you think would define what somebody is truly passionate about? If somebody came to you as I'm passionate about this, how would you know if that's truly what they're passionate about? Or is it just something, like you said, I'm passionate about drinking water because if I didn't, I'd die. They're not really passionate about it. They just, think it's important. How would you define if they're truly passionate about something?
I don't know if everyone knows, and that's okay. And that's okay. I mean, and I think where people and therefore companies need to be open is to having that evolve and change. And it's kind of cliche, but there's a saying that if we look at your to-do list, okay, the to-do list is my contribution, but if we look at your calendar, that's what you're passionate about. Where you put your time is what you actually care about. Because there's plenty of people that give lip service to themselves and externally about what they think they care about and what they feel like they should tell people that they care about. And it's just inauthentic because that person is trying to they want a mask so deep that they aren't willing to say to themselves, like also enter in like a gazillion cliche rom-com tropes. But like people don't tell themselves, I actually care, more about this than this other thing. They're willing to put that line in the sand for like confidence reasons, for societal or familial like pressures. People don't always know because also it changes and evolves, and some people are just passionate about a lot of things. I'm one of those people where I could probably list 20 things I'm passionate about. And I think when I distill it less about those, we'll put this in marketing words. I distill it less into those tactics and channels and more into a strategy. I am a more person. That's what I'm passionate about, being more. And what that means is I'm passionate about learning more, doing more, improving more, and having more life that I'm living. I am not passionate about bed rotting. Like, I don't want to like sit there and like hide from the world. I want to go experience it. I want more of it. And that's me. And I'm a lot. And not everyone wants to do that. And that's okay. And they can be passionate about finding their center and being in a soothing environment. And they can be passionate about bringing serenity. And there's so many ways to take it. And I think where there is no way to tell if someone is truly saying what they're passionate about, it's what their actions show.
Yeah,
big monologue.
I agree with it, right? Like in like passion, it's hard to like ask that question because I got asked it once, and it's hard to distill it down to like a sentence or two. Like passion, like you could say something that you're really passionate about, or you can identify what somebody or yourself is really passionate about based on what you're willing to sacrifice to do it or achieve it, or be able to focus on it. Or solve the problem, whatever it is how much you're willing to sacrifice in order to focus on it. But I don't know. That's the thing. That could change all the time. And then there was a guy I listened to on a podcast that he was on the Diary of a CEO podcast. It's a great podcast. And he said he goes back right to their past, like till they're 10 years old. Like what problems did they have? What kind of experience did they have? And what is something that they kept coming back to? Like when things get tough, what do they keep falling back on? Sort of thing, right? So there's a lot of different answers as to like how do you identify what you or other people are truly passionate about. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I got us off track. That was my fault.
Yeah, no. Childhood is a can of worms we're not getting into today.
Nah, that's another podcast.
That's
you can come back on mine and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, that's a soft couch kind of podcast with a whole notepad. Yeah. But, kind of bringing it back to marketing, and we talked about like some of the disclaimers. So far we've said that like, being authentic is the number one strategy. That's what's going to make, time and consistently putting out content that's authentic is the strategy that works. And then we talked about like when it's not going to hit, and sometimes you just got to be patient. When we think about like what's happening next in marketing and where the future seems to be going versus where it should be going, what are kind of like, what trends are you spotting here?
I mean, AI has changed so much about marketing. Like soon SEO is going to look completely different, right? And you can still kind of game it a little bit, right? Like keywords and all that kind of stuff, and you can put up a million blog posts and then put your keywords in it. Like you can still game it a little bit. But there is one cool thing that AI I think is doing. You can't hide anymore. Like you can't hide not knowing what you're doing. You can't hide, through paying for reviews, because like there's companies out there that'll pay a ton of money to get a bunch of fake reviews. Uh, there's You just can't hide anymore. And I think where it's going is much more relationship focused, which is interesting because you would think as it evolved, it would be less, like there'd be more ways to game the system. But it almost seems like it, like there's just less places that you can hide. If you do try to game the system, it's so obvious now. Right? It's just like you just won't show up on search, or people will be able to see through all the stuff that because again, we're looking for it now. And I think there's one. I had somebody on the podcast, Seth Goldstein, and he was talking about AI and the way it's going to affect SEO. And one of the things is you actually have to put out good content, because instead of pulling up keywords, it'll pull up citations. So here's an answer to your question. We cited it from this source. So you have to have good value-added content out there that AI is willing to cite and send people to, and to give you the best answers to your questions. So I'll probably leave it there. Yeah, I don't have much to add. Like it's just, you just can't hide anymore. Like you just have to be good. You have to be authentic. You have to tell stories, and you have to put out good, valuable content consistently.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I hope that's where it keeps going. And I think that I've seen a lot of people comment this, that like at some point it's just gonna be bots following bots, because that's just what it's gonna be trained to do. Like you put out
It'll be
these,
bots. Exactly. It'll be bots following bots. But then over here, and eventually the bots are going to sound so human that it's going to be difficult, right? But that's where that relationship, that organic relationship, is going to be so important. And people are going to start pulling, and this is one thing that we're doing. We're going to be doing in the near future, is pulling people into our own community where we have control over that. Like there's no bots, there's none of this. So it's this authentic relationship, community focused network, no pun intended, but it's a Summit Chasers network, where we can provide the value, we can solve the problems, we can talk to people, not just try to get their attention. Like you're just constantly, tapping on people's shoulders all day. Like they're going to ignore you eventually. But if you're solving a problem for them, if you're talking to them and not to the masses, trying to hope somebody puts their hand up, and again, I hope this is where it keeps going. Who knows what the future could hold? Things move and change so fast, but that seems to be where a lot of this is going. That seems to be where the people that are going to stand out, that's what they're going to have to do. And that's who they're going to be, is the relationship, internal community, creating, value-adding focus.
Yeah, absolutely. If we look at like the bingo card of like different type of GTM strategies, community-led growth has been one that's just been growing. And if this is something that interests you or anyone else, one of the books that I read recently or listened on Audible as I was driving through California is The Art of Gathering. And there's this idea in it that you build a tribe, but there's a number limit on your tribe. You can't have a tribe anymore. And these kind of social network of connected individuals past a certain point, because then it's a mass. And the way that community can stand out is to have the connections. That's what to me community-led growth is connection. But then again, over here giving out vibes is that like I want everybody to feel connected, whether it's in a networking group or it's just hearing positioning and wording in the marketing material that they're like, that gets me. That is that. I want people to be like, smirking when they see that. And I think that's really important. All right. We're gonna get to the big question. All right. The big question. Behind the curtain. What is a question that someone asks you, but they don't? And I always tell people that this is meant to be something where Maybe there's a strategy that someone came to you and they're like, hey, I really want to do X, Y, and Z. And you're looking at them like, man, you really need to start at ABC. And they shouldn't even be messing with X, Y, Z. Maybe there's something where there's something in your background. I had one guest that had guitars in his background. He's like, I wish people would talk to me more about these. So for you, what is a question that someone should ask you, but they don't?
And it's funny because I wrote it down beforehand because you prepped me for that one, and you asked me the question. Well, we at least we talked about it, which was how much of a foundation did the fitness industry lay for you, or how much of an effect or how much of a foundation can that lay for somebody to be successful in business? Because I think like Alex Ramones, whatever you think of him, I know there's mixed feelings about who he is as a person. That's fine. I don't like your opinion's your opinion, but his background that was his background. Like he sold and flipped gyms, right? Like he had gym launch and all that kind of stuff. But it's such a good foundation. Like my sales foundation in fitness, that is the hardest sales I've ever been in, because people come in and they're signing up. So we would have people come in on like a 21-day challenge. It was $67. And then I would upsell them to a $10,000 6-month program. But if they came in the door and they're like, I want to lose 10 pounds. It's like, okay, great. Like that's a great goal to have. Do you think somebody would pay $10,000 to lose 10 pounds? Some people might. I mean, if you have the disposable income, but most people don't. But would they pay $10,000 to completely change their lives, to feel more confident, to talk more confident, to be able to go to beaches or to be able to go out and do other things and feel confident, feel sexy, and possibly like get the better job or get the confidence to quit the job to start the business or whatever it is? People would pay $10,000 for that. So it's identifying, like people would come to you with the vanity metric. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to lose an inch around my waist. But that's not what they really wanted. They wanted the life that could possibly give them. They wanted to be the person that had 10 less pounds or an inch less on their waist. They wanted to be that person. So you had to find out who that was. And then you had to give them the best chance possible to achieve that goal. And again, you're selling the work. Like they could do all the work and they still might not get it based on, their the body type, their genetics, right? Whatever it is. Maybe they have an autoimmune disorder you don't know about, and that they don't even know about, and they just won't get it. So you're selling the possibility that they might hit a goal. So that it was such a solid foundation that I wish that there was more. Maybe not so much a question I wish people asked. I guess it was more, I wish that the relevance and the foundation, the strength that the fitness industry can create for people to create the success. And then there's also, on the other hand, there is a really, like you talked about before, there's a really low barrier to entry in that industry. So on the other hand, I wish that there was more education and more relevance and more maybe resources poured into it. Because I mean, that's a type of healthcare, right? It's preventative healthcare. So you can go get a certification, take a test, and then you can be a personal trainer. But anyways, that's a different soapbox. But yeah, I think that's probably, how did that create the foundation to the success in business that you've had, right? Because there's so much to learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, mic drop, like for sure. Like that's how I tell people that I have a sales background. I'm like, look, not only did I cold call people, I did introductory sessions where I guided people through a questionnaire to get their pain points and their goals and get to know them. And then I gave them an entry-level offer, and then from there I built trust and rapport, and I convinced them to do something that they could do it on their, of their own effort that they had been avoiding. Like, and not only did I convince them to buy that package, almost all my clients showed up and got the results. They did not like just leave 10 sessions unused. I got them to show up to each session, whether it was at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. or 9 p.m. I got them to show up and to do the work. And they kept coming back and they re-signed with me. And if you aren't building relationships with people, you can't get it done.
No, it's so hard Because to your point too, like even just getting them, if somebody, pays for it, if that's how your business model is set up for, per session or packages, 10 sessions, 20 sessions, 50 sessions, whatever it is, and you get them to show up to every single one, like that in itself means that your fulfillment and your rapport building and your coaching abilities. That's the other thing too. You have to be like the coaching foundation that you can get, the development, the human being development is so important in that space, and you have to develop it. You can't be successful if you don't develop it, which has helped so much. Like before that, I did addictions counseling for a short period of time. And then I went into that type of coaching and fitness coaching. And it made, when I was working with our sales teams, our customer service teams, our coaching teams, our installation, whatever it was, whatever I was doing, that foundation was created because I learned the foundation of coaching and the importance of it and the effect it can have, the positive effect it can have on people. And so there's just, I could talk about this all day, the foundations of that industry, because then you have to fulfill so strongly, because again, they might get the result. They might. Again, there's so much in the way of them possibly getting the result, being things that's out of our control. So you have to fulfill so meticulously. And it's just to get them to show up. You have to provide such a great experience. And so it's such a good, finally I get to talk about it on a podcast. Sorry.
No, we could yeah. I mean, I think it's a great case study, and I love to reminisce about those days. I'm kind of bringing it to a business model perspective too, for those that aren't aware. One, to your point, that coaching is not a skill that is taught enough as people become leaders, or, I think there's so many unsaid cultural things that this one, I do strongly believe in those that codify it, and in our official, this is how to coach coaches. I believe that is a much needed service. I think that explicitly needs to be taught, just the same way as teachers are taught pedagogy and how to teach. I think it is a craft of its own that needs recognition, that needs to be explicitly educated upon. Back to the point about it being an entry-level business, is that if you are a fitness trainer and you are opening a gym, you are paying for space, you're renting a space that is empty. And the reason why it also has a low barrier to entry is because you only need to outfit that space with maybe like $5,000 worth of equipment. Right. So it's not, or you could do it much less. You could open a yoga studio with just a wood floor,
You could just rent space in another gym too. There's lots that you can do.
There's steps, you could be in a big box gym and then take your old clients and open your own CrossFit gym, there's lots of ways to go about it. But the point is that it teaches this group of people that, and then they can open this business, and then they can be profitable and pay their bills in a very short amount of time, as compared to these tech companies that need to get investors. They need to get funding to pay the engineers. And sometimes there's a 5-year, I don't know if there's really 5 years, but for sake of, comparison, there's a much longer runway to being out and have it integrated with your customers. And then, there's rounds of fundraising, and you can bootstrap, or whatever you want to call it, a fitness business with next to nothing. You could just be a mobile fitness trainer, have no money, buy a TRX, which is $150, $200, and just show up to people's houses and provide your labor to help them reach their goals. And that's what I mean by democracy. That is what I want for people, is that I don't want them to suck at it. I don't want them to give misinformation. I certainly don't think that they should do it without passing some sort of exam or having some safety knowledge, and, don't have them do this one exercise move because it's going to break their back, or, be safe with it. But it's democratic. And so I want people to really hear that it's a deeper business, that it's treated very flippantly because of fake influencers, fitfluencers.
Yeah.
Yikes.
We started there.
Yeah. But, at the end of the day, the reason why you and I gripe about Fitfluencers is because we know they're inauthentic. We know that they're fake. And the whole point of the strategies that we're talking today is don't do that, because people will see through you, just like we are wrenching and grimacing because we see through it. We're like, that's bullshit. Like, don't do that. And so, you know, treating your customers with a basic level of respect at a basic assignment of intellectual ability to know that you're full of it. Do that. Be respectful, be yourself, be authentic, and find and distill whatever it is you're passionate about truthfully and honestly, and share that with the world.
Can agree more. And for those of you that are like, well, this person has 2 million followers, they must be authentic or whatever it is. Well, they got there a while ago and using, just again, we don't get me started. Just you want a case study of what not to do? Go look up was it the Liver King? I think is his name.
Oh God, yeah.
Go look
don't
up
look up the Liver King. Don't give him the impressions. Don't do it.
Okay.
Don't even. It's just a scam.
That's what not to do.
Yeah,
that's what not to do. Yeah.
Zach, if people want to find you, where should they go? How can they get a hold of you? Spell it all out for us, letter by letter.
I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. That's spelled LINK. No, I'm just kidding. LinkedIn, Zach Carlin, ZachCarlin on LinkedIn. Summit Chasers Network on LinkedIn as well. Our YouTube channel, Summit Chasers Productions. We're going to be doing some really cool stuff on there here. Well, we are currently filming a lot of cool stuff, but we're going to start the train of actually posting it and doing the series probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I made an announcement on there. I'll let you guys go watch that. And then, LinkedIn, what's the other one? Instagram. That's the one. Instagram. And I think we're on Facebook, and it's just Summit Chasers Network on all those things.
Awesome. This is Leanne with Markigy, MARKIGY, and you can get a hold of me at info@markigy.com. I'm also chronically online on LinkedIn. That is where I doom scroll. So please, like, comment, tag, review. And thank you again, Zach, for coming.
Thank you.